This video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. When people talk about Kratos today, it almost feels like we're talking about two completely different characters. You have the Ghost of Sparta, angry, violent, and vindictive. Depending what corner of the internet you're on, this is either Kratos at his absolute peak, or an outdated version of the character that the franchise eventually needed to grow beyond. Then you have the Kratos as we know today. He's older, quieter, and a father again. A man defined less by how quickly he can lose control, and more by his ability to maintain it. And somehow that made him controversial too. To some people, Kratos matured, to others he got soft. But I think both sides are missing what actually makes the character so special. He grew up. Obviously not literally, Kratos was old as hell by the time we meet him in the first game. I mean when it comes to his psychology. When you look at his entire life from Sparta to Ares to Olympus all the way to Atreus, God of War becomes a story of a man who was taught to fight almost everything before he was ever taught to deal with himself in a healthy manner. Hence why I think Kratos remains one of the most impactful characters in gaming and, to be honest, fiction. The core of his story isn't plainly become less angry. It's about learning how strength without wisdom, restraint, or purpose will eventually destroy everything you are and everything you're trying to protect. And to understand how long it took Kratos to learn that, we have to go all the way back to his beginning. So let's get into it. Long before Kratos became the Ghost of Sparta we all know and love, Sparta already began deciding what kind of man he was allowed to be. Kratos wasn't raised in an environment that prioritized childhood the way we understand it today. He was raised to become a Spartan, and historically that meant boys being forced to enter the agoge, which is Sparta's state-controlled education and training system. Essentially, they take kids at a young age, usually around 7, and mold them into deadly soldiers over time. From the beginning until around the start of puberty, so roughly 11 or 12, the kids were forced to adopt harsh climates and ration food in order to become more competent at stealing, less attached to their past families, and obviously more durable. At 13, they're trained with extensive military techniques and athletics, culminating in their rise to being a soldier at age 18. So knowing all this, most likely a kid raised in this environment isn't going to develop in the most healthy way possible. Obviously, I'm not going to diagnose a fictional character using a psychology textbook. I'm not qualified. Yet. Dr. Blenty on the way, but there's something important here. Children don't learn emotional regulation on their own or strictly from getting older. A huge part of that development happens through forming relationships, having people around you to provide security and to help you understand what you're feeling. Children need to be shown and properly taught how to respond to these emotions. Kratos became extremely developed in only one direction. He knew discipline, and with that, leadership and pain. But when it came to complex and awkward emotions, with feelings like grief, fear, or shame, what was he supposed to do with any of that? God knows I would love for it to be possible, but you can't stab grief. Kratos has spent most of his life developing solutions for problems that could be fought, which becomes a problem when life finally gives you something that you can't fight. Ghost of Sparta embodies this topic. Deimos shows that Kratos' relationship with the gods wasn't a random occurrence that only became traumatic when he was an adult. The gods had already messed up his life as a child. Ares and Athena take Deimos because of the prophecy surrounding the Mark warrior. So, like the good brother he is, Kratos tries to save him and gets boxed. From that hit, he carries a scar for the rest of his life. So before Kratos loses his wife and everything else, there's already a child underneath who learned a hard-hitting lesson very early, which is the people you love can and will be taken from you, and sometimes there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. You know, if there's one thing Kratos probably hasn't had much of, it's a good night's sleep. After everything he's been through, his mind's probably always racing. And if you ever laid in bed stressing about work, school, dealing with anxiety, or thinking about how you told that fine cashier at Wendy's you too when she said enjoy, you know exactly how that feels. That's why I've been using the Manta Sound sleep mask. Some nights I need total silence. Other nights my brain won't shut up unless there's something playing in the background like rain, white noise, and my personal favorite, ASMR. Don't judge me. That's why the built-in speakers are honestly my favorite part. There's no earbuds making my ears hurt at 3 a.m. No phone glowing next to my face. It's just there, playing straight into the mask. And on the nights I want nothing at all, it practically blocks out all light without feeling uncomfortable or like sliding around at 3 a.m. I struggle with insomnia myself and I tried just about everything. This is the first thing I put into my nightly routine instead of something I use once and just forget about. My mom's even worse than I am. She has chronic pain from her herniated discs, barely sleeps. I'ma keep it a buck with y'all. She should have steak and Tim Hortons with the amount of double-doubles she's bought over the years. She usually hates trying new stuff, but somehow, some way, she started using the mask. And for the first time in weeks, she slept a full 7 hours without getting up once, which obviously surprised me. So if you're tired of constantly feeling exhausted and functioning off of 4 hours of sleep, check out Manta Sleep using the link in the description and on screen. Plus, use my code BLUNTY for 10% off. Again, use my code BLUNTY for 10% off and check out Manta Sleep. I love ya. But now, let's get back to the Ghost of Sparta, who probably needed one of those more than anybody. Despite all that, Kratos builds a family. Lysandra and Calliope are proof that there is always more to the man than violence. especially Calliope. Low-key, Kratos was the OG PlayStation girl dad way before Joel. This massive Spartan general who spent his entire life fighting and conquering can still be gentle with his daughter. He isn't incapable of love or being nurturing, and Lysandra sees that humanity better than anybody else at this point. She also sees what his selfishness and obsession is turning him into. She constantly pleads for Kratos to leave the battlefield behind. Just as she sees Kratos for his capability of humanity, she also sees what he truly is, a walking contradiction. He loves his family, meanwhile he leaves them to maintain his need to chase conquest. He's a loving father at home, and a bloodlusted warmonger claiming to fight for Sparta, but really fighting for his own ego. Eventually, those two lives can and will collide. When Kratos is about to lose everything on the battlefield, he does what his entire life prepared him to do. He doesn't accept defeat, and he demands more power.
Ares! Destroy my enemies, and my life is yours!
He calls upon Ares, selling his soul. He gets the power he's looking for, and in return, Ares gets the perfect soldier. Kratos is ambitious, disciplined, and extraordinarily violent, like to vomit-inducing levels. Most importantly, his identity is built around being useful in conflict, and Ares takes that to its extreme. The Blades of Chaos are the physical representation of somebody else finally getting to hold the handle on Kratos, and with them comes the moment that destroys whatever balance he had left. Ares sends him into a village and orders him and his soldiers to destroy it. Kratos doesn't even realize where he's fighting until it's too late, and Ares makes sure of that. In his bloodlust, he kills Lysandra and Calliope, his own family. Calling Kratos simply traumatized after this doesn't really capture the gravity of what's happening. I've talked a lot about on this channel called moral injury. It's used to describe the lasting psychological, social, or spiritual anguish that can follow doing, witnessing, or being unable to prevent something that infringes on your core moral beliefs. It would be one thing if Kratos witnessed or was unable to prevent his own family's death, but he was the gun in this situation. Ares manipulated the circumstances. He wanted this to happen, but those are still Kratos' hands drenched in blood. The games make sure that he can never forget this. The Oracle binds the ashes of his family to his skin. Most people who are fans of the games know this, but for anyone who doesn't, the Ghost of Sparta isn't some cool nickname Kratos came up with. His appearance became a permanent reminder of the worst thing he's ever done in his life. He's literally walking around wearing his guilt. And almost immediately, before he ever serves anybody else, Kratos tries to walk away in Ascension. He tries to break the blood oath with Ares outright and free himself the direct way, but it doesn't work. The Furies drag him down, fracture his memories, and force him to relive absolutely everything. Unfortunately, he doesn't get to take the easy way out. He has to earn his freedom. He goes to the other gods, and for 10 years, Olympus gives him something he's extremely familiar with: back-breaking work. He becomes their little errand boy. Kill this monster, defend this place, and retrieve this thing, and maybe, just maybe, we'll give you the peace you've been asking for. In Chains of Olympus, Kratos is exhausted, and rightfully so. He wants his suffering to end. When he's finally reunited with Calliope in Elysium, you see what he actually wants underneath everything else. All this man wants is his daughter, and yet he has to leave her again. The world needs him to become a weapon one more time. Those 10 years of servitude end the same way they started, with Ares. Olympus' final task is for Kratos to kill the god of war himself, which he does. He earns the freedom Ascension couldn't give him, but only by becoming exactly what he spent years trying to stop being. Everyone sees the same quality in Kratos. They all think he's a one-note idiot that can be pointed anywhere. As long as Kratos believes that the next battle might finally relieve the pain, he'll keep walking towards whatever target they put in front of him, which cemented aspects of his character in reality for me. Obviously, nobody watching this is serving Olympus, but the mechanisms of control they use is very real. Angry people are incredibly useful, especially when the anger comes from something legitimate, i.e. like loneliness, financial pressure, a lack of purpose. All that, they just need to convince you that some person, group, or whatever is the reason for your life feeling the way it does. Then suddenly, you're spending all your energies fighting sideways while somebody else benefits from keeping you angry. Kratos spends years doing literally the exact same thing. Instead of learning how to process any of it or recognizing the techniques used against him, he keeps being handed another enemy to slay. Eventually, Kratos realizes he's been a tool for other people's wars his entire life and decides enough is enough. The problem is, nobody ever taught the weapon what to do once it stopped taking orders, so Kratos forged an option: burn the entire world down.
Zeus, your son has returned! I bring the destruction of Olympus!
The Greek games become way more nuanced than people give them credit for. God of War 2 and 3 basically give Kratos everything he thinks he needs. He knows who's responsible and he feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. This time around, Kratos is no longer at the beck and call of Olympus, which sounds like freedom, right? Well, not really. Kratos is still being pointed towards an enemy by a third party. This time, it's Gaia. The Titans tell Kratos exactly what he wants to hear. Zeus is the problem, and Olympus needs to be destroyed. Help us destroy them, yada yada yada. Which obviously entices Kratos enough to team up with him. A big misconception about young Kratos is that he's this completely independent force of nature who answers to nobody, and aesthetically, absolutely. He's about to throw putazos with gods, what more can you ask for? But narratively, it's the complete opposite, and by the time he realizes it, his response is to find whoever was holding the leash and ice them. Usually after doing so, he feels satisfied for like a second, then the same soul-crushing emptiness hits him like a tidal wave. Literally nothing changes. In fact, things get worse, and 3 showcases this idea to its absolute extreme. Kratos finally reaches Olympus. This time nobody can stop him. He kills Poseidon, and the seas swallow Greece. He absolutely murks Helios, but yo, this shit was raw as hell when I was a kid, like high key. He kills Hermes, steals his jays, and plague spreads across the land. One by one, Kratos gets exactly what he wanted, and one by one, the world around him starts to die. The game lets you experience his revenge as this enormous power fantasy while showing you how horrifying his fantasy actually is. Look at Greece. Due to Kratos' revenge, it's literally an apocalypse. Innocents are dying. This shit looks worse than Gotham after Protocol 10. Innocents who had nothing to do with Kratos or Zeus are paying the ultimate price, which is the exact thing Kratos hated most about the gods. Olympus treated human beings like collateral damage and puppets. By the end of 3, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. God of War becomes political in a much more interesting way than people usually give it credit for. Not necessarily in the realm of partisan politics. I'm sure there's connections that I can't currently make, but in this instance, I'm talking about power. Who decides to declare a war and who actually has to live through it. Imagine living in a world where the ultimate rulers of the reality act less like gods and more like the cast of like fucking baddies. Instead of governing with unmatched wisdom, they throw drinks, scream over each other, and hold on to petty narcissistic grudges. When Zeus gets his feelings hurt, there's no dramatic walkout. Oh no. It's a localized apocalypse swallowing your hometown and everyone you knew and loved. Kratos had spent 10 long years cleaning up after people like that. That is until they pushed his buttons for the last time and he turns around and starts swinging at everybody. That idea obviously transcends beyond mythology and the game. When people are subjugated to feelings of powerlessness long enough, destruction can start masquerading as change. I don't know about y'all, but I've seen it online constantly. People are rightfully so disillusioned with whatever it may be in the world nowadays that their sentiment eventually becomes just let it collapse, or my personal favorite, can the sun just explode already? I get that feeling because I used to feel like that too, like at least something then will change. If you genuinely believe the game is rigged against you, destroying the whole board can feel like the only move you have left, which Kratos obviously does. But 3 asks the uncomfortable follow-up, okay, you burned it down, now what? And like many people, Kratos has no answer. He knows what he's against, but he doesn't know what he's for. At this point in the timeline, the one character who can hint at what Kratos can become is Pandora. In the middle of all this destruction and vitriol, Pandora pulls something out of Kratos we haven't seen properly in years, his parental side. For the first time in a long time, Kratos starts seeing something more than the objective. But knowing that, Zeus knew exactly where to hit him. He mocks Kratos for failing another family, and in his rage, Kratos repeats the same cycle of violence he's trying to avenge. But now it's showtime. The person Kratos has spent all this time trying to reach, Zeus. This is the moment where everything feels like he's worth it. Kratos beats him and gives him absolute licks. After years of believing there's always one more thing or person standing between him and peace, there's finally nobody left. The Pantheon is dead. Everybody dead. But Kratos is still Kratos. Ain't shit changed. That's the part of the revenge fantasy people like Kratos tend to skip over. You can physically remove the person who hurt you without removing what they left inside you. Pause, what? After life spends years trying to beat that lesson through his thick skull, Kratos seems to finally understand it. Athena appears and asks for the power of hope. He gets one final opportunity to let another god decide what happens next, and for once, he refuses. He releases hope to humanity instead, and turns the blade of Olympus on himself. It's a bleak ending, but there's traces of something new in there. Kratos finally uses his powers without centering what he gets from it. And somehow, some way, he survives. I really want to emphasize something relating to this. Kratos is incredibly lucky. Like, despite all the tragedies, this man has an absolute horseshoe up his ass. He gets something most people don't. Another life and centuries to look at the ashes and decide what they mean. Unfortunately, we don't get that luxury. If you decide to destroy every relationship you have because you're angry and spend years letting resentment consume your personality, there isn't another lifetime waiting for you. You just have to lay in the bed you've made. And when we meet Kratos again, that's exactly what he's trying to do. He already proven he can destroy a world. The harder question for him now is whether a man like Kratos can learn how to live in one. The conversation around the newer games gets really weird to me. On the surface, I understand why some people look at 2018 Kratos and think he's toned down. I mean, it's pretty obvious. He's quieter, avoids fights, and spends half the game telling Atreus to control himself. Be that as it may, I don't think he's become less dangerous like I've seen some people on TikTok claim. For the first time in his life, being dangerous is not something he needs to flex. YK constantly externalized whatever was happening inside of him. So for example, if he was angry, most definitely someone else will feel it. Older Kratos most definitely has the same traits. There's just finally something between the emotion and reaction, which is choice. He understands there's consequences and practices emotional regulation. He's learned to harness and use the anger to his advantage instead of letting it control him. This version of him is more calculated. You could see him deciding whether a situation needs the old version of him or the new one. And when it does, yeah, he puts absolute belt to ass. It may be a reach, but I think that's an intentional choice by the devs. When you're younger, strength can be performative. Every minute instance of disrespect feels like something that demands a response. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I know for myself and for people around me, that's exactly how we felt. Eventually, hopefully, you realize that if somebody can make you crash out whenever they want, they're the ones controlling you, which is the exact lesson Kratos spent the entire Greek saga learning. So when I see people call his restraint in the Norse games weakness, I think they're using an extremely narrow definition of strength. Don't get him wrong, he's still capable of absurd violence, best believe that. It's just that violence simply stops becoming his only answer, and we can't talk about how he gets there mentally without talking about his wife, Faye. There's a tendency to reduce Faye as the woman who fixed Kratos, and I really don't like that interpretation. Kratos had to fix himself, he's a grown man, and it's not her responsibility to fix him. What Faye gave him was a relationship where strength didn't have to equate to domination. Let's compare their relationship to Kratos and Lysandra. Like we discussed, Lysandra already saw another side of Kratos. She challenged his ambition and tried to pull him away from the man he was becoming, but he wasn't ready to listen. Then he loses her, and for centuries, love becomes intertwined with guilt. Faye meets a version of him who already seen where his worst qualities lead, and she relates to him because she went through the same things. They worked through their trauma together. She also convinced Kratos that peace and power can coexist in the same person. She was his everything, which would obviously be devastating to Kratos since she dies. He finally builds another family, and once again, he loses his wife. But look what happens this time. He doesn't declare war on the 9 realms or anything like that. He takes her ashes and goes on a journey with their son. This alone shows that Kratos is finally trying. He's finally using the lessons life is teaching him to his advantage. With that said and done, he still has more lessons to learn. He's a difficult father in 2018. He barely knows how to talk to his own son. Half their conversations sound like a coach and an athlete. Anytime Atreus acts like a normal kid and tries to interact with his dad, he gets,
Boy, this way, boy.
Kratos knows how to prepare a child for danger, but he doesn't know how to raise a child that feels safe around him. His instinct at this point is basically, the world hurt me, so I'm gonna make sure it can never hurt you. Which, yeah, sounds loving, but taken too far and it becomes control. Without realizing it, Kratos starts drifting towards the same traits that made him. Trauma has a funny way of surviving through people who swear they'll never repeat it, and Atreus makes him confront that revelation because he's nothing like Kratos, in certain aspects at least. He has more capability to be emotional, curious, and compassionate compared to Kratos. The more Atreus becomes himself, the more Kratos has to decide whether fatherhood means protecting who his son is, or turning him into someone who's easier to mold.
But people, they're trying to survive too.
Close your heart to it.
And that question becomes even more prevalent in the sequel. Ragnarok gives Kratos something the Greek games never really had. People who can challenge and criticize him without becoming his enemies. There's 3 examples that are the most prominent, Mimir telling him he's wrong, and even Atreus can outright disobey him. Kratos has to deal with this and articulate his emotions without getting angry and starting to kill everyone. Freya is probably the clearest answer. Kratos kills Baldur for an extremely good reason, and he saves Freya's life. But from her perspective, he still killed her baby. Obviously being an expert in that field, he accepts and sympathizes with Freya and doesn't tell her that she has no right to hate him. He has to take accountability for his actions, which is super uncomfortable, especially for someone like Kratos. Because of his empathy and control, Freya eventually becomes somebody he can fight alongside. For the first time, Kratos is allowed to exist among people without having to dominate or prove he can, which is why Odin is the perfect antagonist. Odin isn't as direct as Zeus, he's a manipulator that Kratos should recognize immediately. He studies what people want, finds the insecurity underneath it all, and pounces on it. Literally the same mechanics that control Kratos his entire life, except now Kratos isn't the young Spartan beneath Ares, he's the father watching it happen to his son. He knows where this road leads, so Kratos straps up and he's ready for war. I like how they didn't make him a pacifist. Sometimes conflict is unavoidable. The question is, why are you fighting though? The answer in the last saga was hatred, but now he's fighting because he's responsible for the people he loves. This shines through during the assault on Asgard when he starts protecting citizens. Younger Kratos would have considered casualties a part of the cost, and honestly that's putting it lightly. He probably would have been the one causing some. I don't know why some people interpret that as being less masculine or Santa Monica replacing him with some sanitized version. In fact, I think it's more masculine than the alternative. Kratos is doing a much harder thing by caring about people and minding his surroundings. He's putting his money where his mouth is by stepping up for his son and most importantly himself. How is Kratos supposed to raise a prodigy that's most likely going to be more impactful than him when he can't even look himself in the mirror? He knows he has to break the cycle for Atreus. As Atreus grows throughout 2018 and Ragnarok, he increasingly develops an identity that exists independently from his father. As kids mature into teens, it's natural that they create an identity separate from their parents. Shit, I know I did. For Kratos though, that's a terrifying concept. Kratos has no reference point for normal teenage behaviors. Like I said before, Kratos was indoctrinated into the agoge. Everyone he knew besides one person had the same Spartan mentality and mannerisms with minor differences at best. Plus, as we know, Kratos has been a father before, but he never got to reach his state of adolescence with Calliope, so this dynamic is uncharted territory for him. Like a normal teen, Atreus goes a little rogue. He also explores an identity as Loki that has nothing to do with what his father planned for him. This would obviously stir up a little anxiety in Kratos, causing him to want to tighten the leash a little bit and force him to become detached. Now, due to all of his experiences and soul searching during the Norse saga thus far, deep down he knows if he wants to maintain a healthy relationship with his son, he has to start respecting and encouraging him to try to find himself. Kratos almost made the same mistake of repeating the choice he was contemplating in 2018, except now it's even more detrimental than it ever could have been before. Usually when kids are younger, you have more of a leeway to mess up and rekindle, but when they're teens, there's an extremely slim margin of error since it's a direct segue to adulthood. So thankfully, he catches himself before he broke everything they've built and could have built. Atreus is his responsibility, but he doesn't belong to him. He's his own man now. Kratos can guide his son without meticulously micromanaging his entire future. Jesus Christ, try saying that 10 times. For the first time in probably Kratos' entire family tree history, the boy gets a choice. One of my favorite details that connects to the message of maintaining Atreus' light is the origin of his name. I would have thought Kratos would have named him after some legendary Spartan conqueror, but he named him after a soldier he remembered because the dude was unusually optimistic and positive when everyone around them was stone-faced. Even inside a culture obsessed with strength and military excellence, the Spartan that stuck with Kratos the most was the one who bore a smile. Kratos may not have known how to become that person himself yet, but some part of him clearly understood the value in it. And now he gets the opportunity to give the quality he wished he had to his son and maintain it. This makes kind of a tearjerker in Ragnarok, I'm not gonna lie. After all the psychological turmoil Kratos has ever been through, he finally embraces that emotions and empathy are a necessity. He takes that leap of faith with his son that he was so afraid of. He teaches Atreus to break the generational curse that's tainted himself and his family. With these words, Kratos completed his main objective. He broke the cycle that's been haunting him for centuries. Ragnarok proves Kratos can approach his future differently. Valhalla gives him one last problem to solve though. He still has to make peace with the man he used to be. Changing your behavior doesn't automatically mean you've made peace with yourself. Kratos could have spent the rest of his life in Midgard being a better father while still treating the Ghost of Sparta like some disgusting stranger he no longer recognized. Valhalla forces him to stop beating around the bush though. It makes him confront Greece, the throne, his old weapons, and eventually his younger self. The important thing is that Kratos neither absolves himself nor pretends everything was entirely his fault. He finally becomes capable of holding both sides of his history together. He was traumatized, manipulated, and repeatedly exploited by people he thought were more powerful than him, while simultaneously causing an unimaginable scale of death and carnage due to his selfish choices. Two things can be true at the same time. Understanding what shaped you is not the same thing as excusing what you became. In order to perceive and thrive in life without any baggage holding you back, you have to balance both repentance and forgiveness. That's a massive departure from the Greek games where Kratos understood justice as largely punishment. But none of that restored what he lost, so Valhalla gives him something harder than revenge. A life he actually has to make useful. Kratos has spent years fearing power because he knew what he had done with it before. By the end of Valhalla though, he could finally imagine and comprehend holding power without using it for domination. He could now become the kind of god younger Kratos never had and never thought could exist. He can become hope. This puts the final nail in the coffin of the which Kratos is better argument. It's so stupid. Don't get me wrong, you could prefer one, no one's taking that away from you, but both need each other to exist. Erase the Greek games and his restraint loses its meaning. his relationship with Atreus doesn't carry the same weight without Calliope, and his refusal to be manipulated by Odin is a pivotal moment because we watched Ares, Olympus, and Gaia successfully do it for years. At the same time, wishing Greek Kratos to stay that way forever means asking him to remain psychologically trapped at the worst point of his life. You're also begging for a franchise that will remain forever stagnant, plus eventually evolving into mindless gore slop. Just like how Kratos had to realize it in Valhalla, the fans have to do the same. You need both the past and the new to coexist. Kratos has something genuinely interesting to say about life, but in his case specifically masculinity. We don't choose every circumstance that shapes us, and sometimes we don't understand how deeply these experiences affect us until much later in life. Eventually, understanding where you come from has to be more than an explanation for who you are. It has to help you decide who you're going to become. Kratos spent centuries figuring that out. I hope for all our sakes, it doesn't take us nearly that long. Anyways, y'all, thank y'all so much for watching. Let me know what you think, and also let me know what God of War is your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, plus turn on post notifications so you get notified every single time I post. It genuinely helps me keep making these longer videos, so help a brother out, damn! And another huge thank you to Manta Sleep for sponsoring the channel. If you want to check them out while supporting me as well, the link will be in the description down below. Again, I appreciate y'all for watching, I love you, and I'm gonna catch you in the next one.